Hello and warm greetings. My name is Tumaini Liaru, and I'm a first-gen immigrant hailing from East Africa, living, loving, and creating here within the Dish with One Spoon territory. It is my great honor and pleasure to welcome each of you to this screening celebrating all of us.
Thank you. My name is Mangos. I'm from Sigma Anishinaabe. I've been living here on these lands for 3 years as a midwifery student. These lands are the traditional lands of the Mississauga, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and they're the current home to many different nations and many different Indigenous peoples. These are the lands that we've all walked upon. They're the lands that old ancestors used to be on, and they're the lands that we all have certain ceremonies with, and ultimately we have an obligation to them and the people that reside here. I have an obligation to you. At some level you have an obligation to me, and we have an obligation to each other to help. And I extend my heart and my spirit in recognition of our ongoing relationship, should you have me. English.
Thank you. And we thought it was also important to remember that participating in virtual spaces rests on ongoing colonization in Turtle Island and imperialism in African nations. That the impact on human and non-human life are real, from the impact of building submarine cables and internet towers on occupied lands, and the extraction of raw minerals from African countries to build the laptops and phones that we heavily rely on to stay connected. All this to say that Indigenous sovereignty and Black liberation are and always have been closely connected, even in this digital age. And so I thank each of you, I thank our ancestors, and I thank the future generations we welcome into the world every day as midwives and midwifery students.
English.
Thank you, Nungos and Tumaini. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sojourner San Vicente, and welcome to the screening of Learn More Ontario Midwifery. This is a project by and for community, and it's a project that exists amongst the work that Black communities do every single day out of love for one another. It's a project that exists amongst the work that midwives do to grow the profession and provide excellent care, and it's a project that exists amongst the work that midwifery students do to contribute to the profession. I'd like to thank our partnering organizations and funders. I'd like to thank ADBCC, the People's Residents, Pan Fantasy Steelband, and Community Midwives of Toronto for supporting our production efforts and providing us with a safe place, volunteers, and technical support so we could film this series in safety amidst COVID-19. Thank you. I'd also like to thank the Ryerson Midwifery Education Program, Canadian Association of Midwives, and Ancestral Hands Midwives for all of their encouragement and support throughout this process. I'd also like to thank our funders. I would like to first thank the Ryerson Library DME Creators Grant for all of their support from the beginning. From the beginning of this initiative, they provided us with resources, guidance, and workshops to ensure that we could film this series. If you have the opportunity, you should check out their summer showcase, which features this work, as well as the work of our fellow grant recipients, who are doing amazing things to contribute to their communities. I'd also like to thank the Ryerson Student Life and Learning Support Student Initiative Fund, who also funds student-led initiatives at Ryerson. They have been an incredible support and were just tremendous to work with. I would also like to thank the Ryerson Faculty of Community Services and the Association of Ontario Midwives for all of their funding support as well, and for acknowledging the importance of this work. I'd also like to thank our incredible production team. I'd like to thank our cinematographer, Lulu Wei, camera operator, Ivor Piku, sound design, Matt Beckett, motion graphics designer, Suhan Kim, colorist, Matthew St. Cyr, French translations, Michael Lashley, as well as our incredible editor, Desiree Marshall. You all have been such a pleasure to work with, and thank you so much. I'd also like to thank our incredible video participants who took the time to come to set, film the series, and share their experiences with us. I would like to thank Natasha Morris, Joy Laps Lewis, Larnell Lewis, Andrea Williams, Maddie Williams, Kosar Yassin, Andrea Campbell, and Natasha Singleton Bassara. Thank you guys so much. I'd also like to thank the mentors for this project. I'd like to thank our production mentor, Lulu Wei, midwife mentor, Dion Amsterdam, research mentor, Fatima Gure, and faculty mentor, Manavi Handa. I'd also like to thank all of you. Many of you met with us over the summer and over the fall and the winter to provide feedback and also make this project better and better. This is for you. I'd like to now hand it over to my friends, fellow midwifery students, and teammates, Hanan and Tumaini, to introduce this work. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hanan, and I'm one of the producers of the Learn More Ontario Midwifery video series. Learn More Ontario Midwifery presents public information about midwifery care in Ontario, and these videos are in honor of Black communities, midwives, and midwifery students, and their experiences of birth, caregiving, and nurturing future generations. We acknowledge the legacies and work of Indigenous midwives and communities of Turtle Island and assert our gratitude, respect, and love in the spirit of Black and Indigenous collectivity.
Hi, my name is Tumaini Liaru, and I'm one of the producers of the Learn More Ontario Midwifery video series. To develop the video series in the summer of 2020, we were mentored by researchers and midwives to develop a survey with closed and open-ended questions and have guided conversations with Black people and people of African and Caribbean descent in Ontario. These conversations were held with about 30 community members, and our goal was to better understand common misconceptions and educational gaps in Ontario midwifery care. We found that most people were surprised to learn that midwives and doulas are not the same, that midwives do not just care for people who want to have home births or to give birth at a birth center, but that many midwifery clients also choose to have their babies in the hospital. That midwives are primary care providers who do not work under doctors, and that midwives are also fully funded by the government, meaning that the cost of having a midwife is covered for anyone who lives in Ontario, regardless of their immigration status. Additionally, all respondents strongly agree that having a Black healthcare provider would be important to them. With this information, and after several review sessions with community members, midwives, and the Association of Ontario Midwives, we used publicly available information on Ontario midwifery care to create the video content that covers topics such as how to get a midwife, how midwives are trained, and information about midwifery services.
When I was 17, I got pregnant, and I had my first son at 18, and I was alone. I had no support person in labor. It was just not an ideal situation for a young Black teen mom, and yeah, I felt it. I felt it in the hospital. I felt punished. I felt unsupported. And I knew that I needed to sort of explore ways to make a difference. The more I researched, midwifery popped up. I saw the model of care, and I was like, yes, that's it.
I've often had people ask me if I'm a doula, and I said, no, I'm the midwife. And they said, well, what's the difference? And I said, well, we're the primary health care providers. So our job is to take care of you when you're pregnant. So all the same labs that you would have with an OB or a family doctor, your same test results, we take care of all of those things. We counsel and give you advice and tell you what's going to happen. We can order medications for you. We can do referrals for you if necessary. We deliver the baby. When you go into labor, you call us, we deliver, and we do the suturing and everything that comes afterwards, and we take care of you for 6 weeks after.
Midwives provide care to pregnant people. Most people are eligible. If you're ever in doubt, just call a midwifery clinic and find out. You can always talk to a midwife just by calling, or an administrator of a clinic, and to sort of confirm whether or not you're eligible. When complications arise, we do one of two things. Sometimes we just manage the complication because it's within our scope, and we are trained to deal with emergencies. When it falls outside of our scope, we do work collaboratively with doctors, OBs, specialists. So we consult with the appropriate specialist. Usually it's an OBGYN or an obstetrician, as most may know them as, and we work collaboratively with them.
Hi, I'm Fatima.
I'm Sojourner.
And I'm Tumaini.
And
we're Ontario Midwifery students. A midwife is a primary care provider that gives care to people during their pregnancy. They attend their labor and delivery, and they also provide them with care in the 6 weeks following their delivery. To become a midwife in Ontario, you will have to complete an undergraduate degree in midwifery. This typically takes about 4 years to complete, and the program is offered at 3 different universities in Ontario, at Laurentian, Ryerson, and McMaster University. If you're an Indigenous person who wants to become a midwife, you can also complete a program called the Aboriginal Midwifery Training Program. Your midwifery training is composed essentially of 2 parts. In your first year and a half, you are in class and you're studying anything and everything from anatomy and physiology to chemistry, biology, and reproductive physiology. But you're also taking a number of theoretical courses that are meant to provide you with some training on midwifery values and principles. In addition to working alongside midwives, you'll also have the opportunity to work alongside a number of other healthcare providers. For instance, an obstetrician in a hospital setting, but you may also have the option of working alongside a lactation consultant.
To find a midwife, there's a tool called a Find a Midwife tool at ontariomidwives.ca. You would go to that website, you can enter your address, the city you live in, or your postal code, and it will show you a list of midwives that are near to you, and it will show you the clinics that they work at. You can call those clinics to see if they're taking new clients. Sometimes clinics might tell you that they have a waiting list or that they're full. It's best to call a midwifery clinic to see if they have any midwives available as soon as you know that you're pregnant. That allows you more time to get to know your midwife, more time to build a relationship, build trust, and get to know each other. You don't need a referral to have a midwife. Anybody can call a clinic directly, say that they're pregnant, and they will pair you with a midwife or team of midwives if there are any available.
Midwifery services in Ontario are free to residents of Ontario because we are funded by the government, similar to doctors or nurses, for example. You can get midwifery care for free in Ontario if you do not have OHIP, if you are uninsured, or if you are a refugee.
My name is Andrea Williams. My spirit name is Manginkwe. I'm from Toronto. I'm 38 years old, and this is my son Owen Tennessee. He's 2, and my daughter Madeline. She's 12.
Hi.
I chose midwifery care for my second successful pregnancy because it was really important to me that I have community care, but also another voice to help amplify and advocate for my needs. It was also really important that I be able to have autonomy over my body during my pregnancy, and to be able to have people who understood how important that was for me to be able to make decisions for my body and my baby. I had like a litany of options. I could go to the hospital with my midwifery team. I could go to the birthing center where I'd be able to have my family there in the waiting room or in the room with me.
I was able to talk to the midwives during her pregnancy, so when she was delivering my brother, I knew that she was in good hands. The midwives did come to our home a little bit to check up on my mom and my brother, see how they were doing. And we also gave him a cedar bath for the first time, and they were there for that experience.
I feel it's important for birthing parents to make the decision that's best for them. I can recommend a midwifery care because it was the best fit for me and my family. And I also had a really amazing team, so it was a beautiful experience for me. What I want to do is just amplify that birthing parents and families should be able to find and have access to what they feel the most comfortable with and what suits their family's needs.
I had 2 out-of-hospital births, one at home and one at the Toronto Birth Centre. My experience with a midwife outside of the hospital, I think it was better than I could have imagined because there was a lot of involvement with my family. As I was laboring in the room, they were relaxing out there, and like when we were doing the tour, I remember that there was an area that they could sit and relax, and there was a kitchen, and just for them to be comfortable throughout that whole time. So I was happy knowing that they were enjoying themselves. But I also really like the amenities. I like the water, the tub, and like just the placement of it and how comfortable it was. Just the whole thing was really nice. And then at home, I had the entire family there, and I controlled the environment that I was giving birth in. You know, people were in and out of the apartment. I originally thought that wasn't a possibility unless I had a big home. Talking to the midwife, I think she told me that was a possibility. I told her I live in a very small apartment. I don't know if it's possible. I don't have the tub that I dreamed of. I know that the midwives would not have offered it if they thought that I was at risk in any way. It was a different experience than what I thought. I tell everybody about it now.
A typical appointment with my midwife was pretty standard, I think, like what you're used to when you go to a doctor's checkup. She's checking all my vitals and all my stats. And then after that, there was a lot of information sharing. What my progress is in my pregnancy, what I can expect on the next checkup and like in our next visit. And yeah, just answering my questions and letting me feel like I was a part of the process and that I knew everything that was coming up. My second pregnancy, I was going to attempt a VBAC. I had a C-section in my first, so we had very open discussions about what that would look like. But I felt that like she was very supportive of just my desire to have a VBAC, and let me know like, okay, well, here's according to your health and your age and whatever, you're good, you're clear to go. And she was very supportive in trying to get me to go through that process. I think a lot of people don't really know that with a midwife you have the option of getting an epidural and any other pain relief, and that I was one of those people. I did not know that, and it was really great to quickly find that out, that I would be able to have the pain relief.
Some of the benefits of midwifery that we were able to experience were longer appointments. to make sure that we understood everything, that we understood all the choices that we had. The postpartum care, which was really, really important, and the fact that it was something that they would come to us to do. I literally didn't have to leave my bedroom to have care and have amazing care at that. I was struggling with breastfeeding with her. I didn't nurse Kari, and she came and assessed what I was doing, and within minutes I was able to change my form, which completely transformed the experience. I'm still breastfeeding. She's almost a year old. And I think that had that not happened, I may have stopped.
Having access to a pager number of a midwife is empowering, but it's also, it's not something that you're used to. Someone who's a care provider, having access to say, for example, my wife is feeling something, she's not sure, or Joy can message them and say, hey, I'm just calling, feeling something a little bit weird, can we talk about it? I would absolutely recommend midwifery care to others. I think the important thing with the care that you receive from a midwife is that it follows you from the beginning to the end. Midwives are your friend. You know why? Because they care.
My message to healthcare providers who are caring for Black clients would be to really listen and to take the time to learn who they are and what their needs are, and to really listen to what it is that they're asking for.
I wish that our care providers understood that not all relationships look the same. And just because of the color of our skin, not to assume that if I'm not present, that I'm not present. So for example, if I'm not at an appointment with my wife, maybe it's because I'm working, not because she's a single mom. And I feel that general healthcare providers usually assume that the relationship is fractured. And it's usually based on the color of our skin.
And I think what I would add to that is that yes, we're together, but the quality of care I receive should not change based on the status of my relationship.
There's a lot of issues and things that Black people have to deal with that non-Black people cannot understand. So understand that you cannot fulfill that role entirely, and to always have another Black healthcare worker with you, or somebody who can be able to advocate for them. If they want music or if they want certain lighting, don't diminish that. That can make or break their experience. And looking back, every little thing for me was a big deal. When you notice that you're falling short, or that the client is speaking a language, even if it's English, if it's something that you're not understanding, then to step back and bring in somebody who can.
As a Black midwife, I do struggle because I see very few members of my community providing midwifery care. There's more and more of us out there, and we're rooting for more applicants to the program and to evolve the profession of Black midwifery in Ontario. I also see that there is not enough members of the Black community accessing midwifery care. And I'm not sure entirely why that's the case, but I do want to see more and more Black people reaching out to midwives and having their questions answered in terms of what we do and how we provide care.
I feel proud that I'm a Black midwife, I gotta say. And I love that when I have clients come into the clinic who are Black in any respect, and they look at me, there's a little bit of an understanding that I think that they feel like they're going to get understanding from me on a different level. And often there is. Not always, but often, right? And so I'm so proud to be able to provide that service and to connect with my community in that respect and give them really good care. As a student coming through, that was hard because I often felt like I knew I was the underdog. I felt like when I walked into the room, they didn't see me as a midwifery student, but as a Black midwifery student. And therefore, I am a little bit less than, I'm not going to be as articulate, I am not going to have the right answers. And so I was shy. And I wish I could go back in time and speak up a little bit more, because when I think about it, I paid the same tuition as everybody else, and I have the right to ask questions. I think that my education definitely was stunted because I didn't feel like I had the levity and the freedom to be allowed to be a student. What do I want the Black community to know about midwives? That we're here, that we're available, and that you don't have to pay for us out of pocket. OHIP covers our care, and that we do come to your house. We do home visits postpartum.
Families should be able to find and have access to what they feel the most comfortable with and what suits their family's needs. So being able to have midwifery care more readily accessible, having care providers that are reflective of their family dynamic or their culture or their teachings is really important.
Hi, my name is Dion Amsterdam. I am a midwife in Toronto and one of the mentors for the Learn More Ontario Midwifery Video Project. Being one of the few Black midwives in Ontario is not only an honor, but a responsibility to ensure justice in the pregnancy journey and the birthing room, and hold that sacred space for the new souls to be welcomed and celebrated. We hope that you enjoyed the screening of Learn More Ontario Midwifery, and we would like to thank the incredible video participants, Andrea Campbell, Natasha Singleton Bassaraj, Andrea Williams, Kosar Yassin, Natasia Morris, Joy Laps Lewis, and Lernell Lewis. And again, thank you to the incredible production team. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Sojourner San Vicente, Director and Executive Producer, and producers Tumaini Liaru and Hanan Youssef for putting this incredible project together. It's so inspiring to see what these midwifery students have done at just the beginning of what I anticipate will be an amazing midwifery career. This afternoon, we are pleased to welcome a discussion panel on Black birth in Ontario. Please welcome moderator Keon Christie, midwife Nicole Waith, and midwifery clients Leroy Newbold and Joy Laps Lewis.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the panel discussion portion of this event. My name is Keon Christie. I am a medical sociologist finishing up my master's at the University of British Columbia and starting my PhD at the University of Michigan this fall. My research has explored the prenatal health care experiences of pregnant Black people across the diaspora, so I feel really honored and fortunate to be moderating this really important panel alongside three really amazing individuals. But before getting into introducing our panel, I wanted to note we will be having a question and answer period at the end of the panel. So if you do have any questions for the panelists while they're speaking, please feel free to write them in the chat function and we'll try our best to get to them at the end of the panel discussion. So I think one of the really great things about this panel and also about the video that we just saw is that it's made up of people who have engaged with midwifery care in different ways. So we're all bringing really different types of knowledge and different types of expertise into this space. So with that being said, I think it would be great if we could just start off with some introductions to kind of situate ourselves and the knowledge that we'll be sharing today. So Nicole, do you want to start us off with telling the audience a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Waith, and I am a senior partner and registered midwife at the Midwives Collective of Toronto, where I've been practicing for over 14 years. I'm also a preceptor of midwifery students and was a board member of the first board of directors of the Toronto Birth Centre. It's nice to have you all here, and thank you for joining us.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us, Nicole. Leroy, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Leroy. I'm a midwifery client and a parent of 3 children.
Thank you. Joy, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Joy Lewis. I am a mom of 2 children, and I had those children with the support of midwives. And I am an artist, an arts educator, creative consultant, and creative wellness.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here today. So I'd like to just start off with some questions for Leroy and Joy. Could you tell us a little bit about your birth stories? So what were the moments, both challenging and helpful, that stood out to you? Joy, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I will say that I'm going to focus. I think the angle that I can bring is that of my 2 children, one has special needs, and through that pregnancy, I ended up having a shortened cervix, and so my midwives had to engage an OB, and so I was able to go through that pregnancy with the support of an OB in conjunction with my midwives, and I found it to be very helpful. I felt safe. I had to be induced, but my midwives were still able to be at my birth. And even though my son had special needs and he actually ended up needing to be shipped off to sick kids where he spent 8 months, my midwives were still able to support me postpartum because I was healthy. And so I just wanted to highlight that my midwives came to the hospital to do my checkups. They came and when I say the hospital, they came to the children's hospital where I was with my child. So I wasn't hospitalized birth, me personally, and they came to the hotel that I stayed at near the hospital, and they supported me tremendously, even though there was some complications with my child. So I think that's the thing that I would highlight the most.
That's really great to hear. Leroy, do you want to tell us about your birthing stories and any moments you want to highlight or challenges?
Sure. Well, I'm a trans masculine person, and like I said, I have 3 kids. The first 2 my partner gave birth to, and I gave birth to the youngest child. I got pregnant in December of 2012, and I used a known donor who's 9. And my donor and I came up with an agreement, and the process of getting pregnant was pretty easy for me. My donor is HIV positive now, but at the time he wasn't, so the process was pretty straightforward. And I hope to actually use the same donor in the future. So I'm learning about the whole undetectable, untransmissible, and what that process could look like. But to be honest, the hardest part of it pregnant was mostly just making it to the appointment, doing the internal ultrasounds and monitoring, since I really don't like blood draws and invasive tests involving my body. And most challenging moments of my pregnancy had to do with being pregnant as a trans masculine person and dealing with mental health. So being pregnant as a trans man is hard because of a few reasons. I had recently come out to my parents as trans, and they weren't very far in their acceptance of me as trans. So when I got pregnant, my mom kind of backslid her understanding of transness. and basically thinking that since I was pregnant and since I would be a mom, that means that I'm a woman. And it was really hard because I was dealing with the stress of pregnancy and really knowing what my family would look like. So the other thing that happened in my pregnancy is that because of the hormones, it caused me to experience depression in pregnancy. And I had heard a little bit about post-natal depression, but I had never heard of perinatal depression. So I tried to access some services from perinatal mental health part of St. Michael's Hospital. And I had a long interview with them about my family history and mental health history. And by the end, they hadn't recommended any care or solutions for me, but they were recommending that I be followed by a CAS worker. So it felt really unhelpful. It felt very punitive and scary. So I asked my midwife at the time to advocate for me, which she did amazingly, and I'm so grateful about that. Yeah, and the best moment of my pregnancy was when my child was born and my hormones slowly went back to normal. She was so beautiful, big eyes, big cheeks, and I didn't feel depressed anymore. I just felt like myself again. So that was the best moment for sure.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think what both of your comments really highlight is like how unique each pregnancy experience is, which is important to remember when we're thinking about midwifery care. So that kind of leads into the second question that we had here, which was what influenced you and your family to seek midwifery care for your pregnancies? Leroy, do you want to get us started off with that question?
Yeah, when I was considering pregnancy care options, I mostly thought about the fact that I really didn't feel comfortable going to the hospital, and healthcare services from someone. I didn't really feel comfortable unless it would be I would be going to somebody that another trans person has utilized and could vouch for them. And even with this, I have to be careful because a few times I've accessed services that white trans people have told me about, and I didn't experience the services in the same way at all. In terms of pregnancy care specifically, I was looking for somebody who would understand that trans men also give birth, and I was looking for somebody who already avoids gender language throughout the care. Like someone who talks about people giving birth, not only women, and chest feeding rather than breastfeeding, stuff like that. And I know everyone is at different continuum with their learning, but when you're pregnant and going through all these things, you just want someone to support you, not someone who you're teaching as you go along. So one thing I knew when I got pregnant is that I might not be able to chest feed because of my relationship that I had to my body. So I was looking for someone who would be supportive with me no matter what decision I made around breastfeeding. And I was also looking for a who's Black. And I ended up finding the best midwife, and it was worse for me because I wanted somebody who could understand my experiences and was able to support me accordingly.
Thank you for that. Joy, what about you? What was anything that influenced you and your family to seek out midwifery care during your pregnancies?
I had a friend of mine, Gilly Zemmer, who had by the time I got pregnant, she'd had 2 or 3 of her children, and she spoke very highly of it. And I felt like, I said, let me look into this, let me understand it more. And I believe that she had had her first with an OB and the second with a midwife. So I started to look into it, and then I think at one year I was finishing our taxes, our bookkeeping, and I was watching everything on Netflix, and I ended up watching, or maybe it was online, I ended up watching Ricky Lake's The Business of Being Born. And she too makes this comparison of working with an OB versus working with a midwife. And there are a lot of other pieces that come together in that conversation in the United States. There's some other things that kind of connect there, and the fact that midwives aren't as supported as much by insurance companies, and there's a lot of, you know, back and forth there. So I wanted to put that kind of policy and politics aside and think about her experience. And so I decided to look into it more. I ended up binge watching water births on YouTube, and I really say that how can I describe this? That I had always had this image of Vivian in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and this, like, you're probably guys are probably like, you watch too much TV, Joy, but I literally watched Vivian, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, when she was having Nikki, and when nobody wanted to hold her hand. And every on television birth and any birth that happened in the media was always this woman screaming in pain, and it just seemed like this awful experience. And so I really wanted to just understand, and then I have another group of people that are saying our body's made to do this, and this whole other approach. So I watched these births and I saw these women just breathing through their contractions, and so that really left me feeling like I want to have a home water birth, and the only way to do that is with a midwife. So I think it was those things that led me to it was just that the experience of it, because I felt, like I said, Aunt Viv, nobody wanting to hold her hand, just left me traumatized. And I was like, that can't be the narrative that I'm going to work with, because I won't be giving birth.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's we get good lessons from TV sometimes. So I'm glad that that you're able to come into midwifery care in that way. So Leroy and Joy, you both talked about different things that kind of led you to midwifery care. So like binge watching water births and finding a provider who used gender inclusive language and could care properly for trans folks who are giving birth. But I'm wondering if there was any other important factors for you and your family in deciding to access midwifery care. And I know you both touched on some things, but if there's anything else you'd like to add, Leroy, do you want to go first?
Sure. The most important thing for me, which I have mentioned, is just advocacy. It was necessary for me to self-advocate twice against the AS before my child was even 1 month old. Once because of my experience in St. Michael's perinatal mental health, and once because of a lactation issue. And I ended up having issues with chest feeding, and I was trying everything. Before I started using the bottle, I was trying the nipple shields, tubes, and the lactation and try to get me a CAS worker, because my baby was losing weight at first. But actually, I just needed to move to bottle feeding. And again, it felt like people were obsessed with getting me a CAS worker. And it was really intense and stressful for me, because I actually wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. Just learning how to chest feed properly. I feel maybe people were trying to help, but it doesn't feel much for a majority of Black parents, that doesn't really feel helpful. And I think that I looked young had to do with it. People's assumptions of me and Black parents, and I ended up being protected a lot more, I feel, because of my job as a teacher. I know that low-income, dark-skinned Black moms have less protection, and I also think that's unacceptable. The other thing that's important to me is that I think midwifery as a field needs to be careful with the whole idea of celebrating what's natural as better. As a client, you can tell when a care provider thinks that, for example, like chest feeding is better than formula, or non-medicated birth is better. And it really should be the client's decision about all those things. So that was really important for me through the process as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Joy, do you want to let us know about what was important for you and your family while accessing midwifery care?
The things that were most important to me were the time that the midwives took to explain things. I never felt as if I was being rushed through an appointment, especially in my first pregnancy when I didn't know anything about what was happening with my body. Like, I really depended on them, and I felt supported. I felt like I was being given the information and allowed to make really informed decisions. I also felt that my midwives were really interested in including my partner. And I think that when you experience that differently in other areas of healthcare, and especially as you're walking along, I think whoever you identify as the person who's going to support you through, they need to be included. And for me, that was my husband. And I felt like my midwives were just as important. They were just as concerned about him being informed as they were for me. And that's something that we set out as a value. But I find that even if you might set that out as a value in terms of what you're looking for in your healthcare, that your provider doesn't always respond that way. And so that was really, really important. I think, again, because of the medical fragility, it would have been really easy for me to not pay attention to what was happening to my body post-birth, again, like what happened with my son. So it was really nice to have that follow-up and to have that follow-up meet me where I was, like literally and figuratively. So that was really important. And when I experienced that the first time, it really reinforced the need to go this path, or go to the path of a midwife for our second birth. And I would say the other thing that I would want to highlight as being really important was just the values and the care. And when we were preparing for our first birth, it was a doula and our midwives that really taught us about how we could protect our space. And again, because I was in my first birth, even though I had my midwives, that because I had to be induced, I had to do it in the hospital. They really taught us about how do we control the environment in the hospital room? How do we control the energy in the room? And it was through that it really made a difference to be able to be in the hospital under the care of an OB that I didn't know, with the support of my midwives. Like, it's a different dynamic, but to understand how to be in control of that environment, that was really important. And when anybody asks me about what did I learn from my midwife or from my doula, like that's one of the huge things. And it was really empowering my partner, my husband, to know how he could protect me. And I think that one of the challenges that we have as Black folks in the healthcare system is that there's this hierarchy that's almost instilled into us, that that the doctors know everything, that you can't question what's being told that you have to do. And so just the idea to know that, like, not only am I, like, they gave me a voice and encouraged me to use my voice, they've also encouraged the person that I trust to use their voice and to advocate. And so I think those are the things that are most important to me.
Important things, and I hope that I've learned a lot from listening to you both speak, and I hope that the audience has as well. We're now going to move into some questions for our expert midwife on the panel, Nicole. Nicole, can you tell us about what you enjoyed the most about being a midwife and why midwifery care is important?
What I like most, I would say, about being a midwife is just the intimate, precious, privileged space it is to be part of such an important time in people's lives. It's like people are inviting you into something that's really personal and really profound in their lives, and you're kind of going through that process with them. And I think that that's a really privileged space to be in, that people are welcoming you into that time and space. I think part of, what was the second question? Just what prompted me to become a midwife? Was that the other one?
Yeah, you can discuss that, and also why you think midwifery care is important.
Yeah, I think, if I look back on my own birthing experience, I was a teen parent, a single teen parent, and it was a really challenging time for me. And I feel like a lot of my narrative was taken away from me as a young Black teen parent. And I feel like it's really important to give people their own narrative and their own space to tell their own story and to have their own choices and their own experiences. And I think I didn't even realize that that was a component of what makes midwifery important to me, but also I just remember growing up, you know, years ago watching the Cosby Show and thinking what Cliff Huxtable did was kind of cool, and thinking maybe I would want to do something like that. Not exactly like that, but I liked the idea of that. And so as I started to look into it more in the mid-90s, when midwifery was still really new and internet was still really new, I would find myself at the reference library just opening folders about what midwifery was and deciding that I would volunteer and just get my feet wet and see what it was all about. And at that time, there was only about 70 midwives in the province, and there was a teeny office with 2 people working in it. And I just answered phones, and I just, you know, realized that this is actually what I really wanted to do. So it was really the beginning and the little seed that got planted that made me realize that, yeah, this is something that that I feel I could do. And I feel like, you know, however 20 years later, it was definitely the right choice for me. And I really love seeing, especially when people come back, when they have their second and third or subsequent babies, or you see them in the grocery store, or you see them, you know, in different spaces, and you just see their kids thriving and they tell you about their experiences. I think those things bring a lot of job satisfaction, and just satisfaction in general, knowing that there's a service in the community that's needed, and that you're able to provide some sort of benefit to the community. I think that's a really important component of why I do what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you would probably know, I think we all kind of know that there's a lot of misconceptions about what midwifery care is and what midwifery care entails, who midwives are midwives doulas, are midwives, all of these different things. So what would you say to the people who are hesitant to have midwives, or who may feel like it's a less safe option, or who families may have concerns about midwifery?
Yeah, I would encourage people to get educated. I know, you know, over the years, it's not uncommon that there's a lot of misconceptions and fears and worries that people might have, partners or parents that don't really know a lot about how midwifery works here. I think a lot of people go back to preconceived ideas or old visuals of what midwives are, that we're uneducated, that we're kind of the last resort. We, you know, where people come to us because they don't have any other options. Like, depending on which part of the world people come from, whatever their cultural understanding of midwifery is, a lot of the time it's actually very incorrect. And once people actually know that, you know, midwives in Ontario are educated, that we are incorporated into the healthcare system, that we are funded through the Ministry of Health, like, and that we have emergency skills and have lots of equipment and that tends to open people up a little bit more into like being more open to what we have to offer. And once they actually experience it for themselves, then they actually almost always have a very different understanding and idea, positive idea and understanding of what we do and what we don't do.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, sorry, that's okay. No, I was just going to say, you know, I think trying to incorporate families is part of what we do. And when you incorporate family, that's often when people get a more positive view, and they see that we come into homes and that we are actually more involved in the care, and we provide a lot of the informed decision making for clients. So then they actually have a more positive idea of what we actually do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the education piece, or just the knowledge piece, is really important. In my own research, when I was talking to pregnant people in Canada, a lot of them said that they didn't know about midwifery care during their first pregnancy, but after that, when they found out about the model, they said they'll never go back to like an alternative, but like they really enjoy midwifery care. So I think that that knowledge piece is particularly important. So this is a question just for everybody on the panel to just kind of wrap up our discussion. What do you want to imagine for the future of Black birth in Ontario? And Joy, do you want to start us off with your answer to that question?
I would like, for the future of Black birth, I would like to see a healthcare experience. And sorry, yeah, I can speak very broadly. when I answer this question. I would like to see an experience where when we go into the healthcare system, as Black folks, that we're not met with anti-Black racism. I just feel like I've experienced it on so many levels. I've experienced, I've experienced having nurses or healthcare providers not assume that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I don't know what my body is saying, that I don't know what the pain that I'm feeling. Like I don't think we should be questioned in a way where it undermines what we know about ourselves and what we need. I want to imagine an experience where a healthcare provider isn't going to choose how they approach me based on what my relationship status is, or who I'm with or who I'm not with, or who I am. Just the fact that there's a standard of care to be upheld. I want to see a situation where I'm not getting a particular, I'm not experiencing like bias, conscious or unconscious, in how people are dealing with me. And so, and I want to see for Black families that their birth choices are being respected. And I think that, as I mentioned before, there's a lot to be said around, only doctors can help you and support you through this process. And I think that there's a lot of unlearning to happen around how we as Black people interact with people of who we deem as someone in a place of authority. And I think we have these hierarchies where if you're a doctor or a lawyer or someone, you get this extra respect. Whereas I think that like we need to look at the situation for what it is. Do you have a complicated pregnancy that deserves that is not safe for a midwife? Yes, then we need to explore the person who's an expert in that. But we can't just decide that this person knows more, this person is better, and this is more appropriate for you just because. Like I think we need to step back and understand why we think that way, because I think that it's sometimes doing more harm than good. And if we're talking about healthcare and talking about what's the goal is for people to experience safe, healthy, supported pregnancies and birth experiences and postnatal experiences. And so we can't have people that are being questioned as to whether or not, or we can't have a population of women or Black women being recommended for CAS support when they actually just need other supports. You know what I mean? So I could go on and on, but that is all that I'm gonna add for right now.
A woman's body that definitely needs to be challenged and dismantled. So thank you for sharing that. Nicole, do you want to talk to us about what you imagine or what you want for the future of Black birth in Ontario?
I want safe birth. I want healthy outcomes. I want the disparity of outcomes for Black bodies and Black babies to be different. I want safe spaces for Black clients and Black midwives too, for us to work and be in. I think an appreciation for different kinds of knowledge is really important. There are spaces and needs for obstetricians and nurses. There are spaces and needs for midwives. And I think that the knowledge and the area of expertise is different. There's some overlap, but it's different. And I think that there's a place for all of those types of knowledge. And I think that midwives are no different in that sense. I think that we're in a good position to create safe spaces for clients, however they identify. And I think that that is an important component of the care that we provide, in that, people come to us because they want to make choices and they want information. And I think that we definitely need more Black midwives to represent the Black and brown people that we're serving. I think we should be a reflection of the community. So definitely for people who are considering midwifery as an option, who are Black and brown and racialized. We need you. We need you desperately. We just need to expand the profession. We need to let people know that we're here. There's people who don't even know midwifery exists still in hospitals even, and it's really up to us to be able to continue to provide good care with good outcomes that we see, but to decrease the disparity between Black and brown outcomes, poor outcomes that we see in North America. I think it's possible, and we're on our way, and our healthcare system is set up pretty well to support that. Universal healthcare makes a big difference, but it could improve. And I think that in terms of a Canadian or Ontario context, tracking outcomes for Black and brown people is really important for us to know where those disparities lie so that we can improve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you raised like a really great point and about changing and like addressing those disparities, because we know that those disparities aren't because Black people are inherently pathological, it's because of racism, right? So any type of disparities that we're seeing in terms of our outcomes is a product of more structural factors. So it's important to address those things to improve those outcomes. But if we don't collect data on those things, it's difficult to measure. But also, in addition to the empirical data, we also need political will to change those things. And we need more Black midwives and more people on board to help in that effort. And last but certainly not least, Leroy, do you want to talk to us about what you imagine for the future of Black birth in Ontario?
What I like to imagine is safety, respect, freedom, and hopefully people who are most marginalized within the community having access to dignity within the whole birth experience. So, Black transgender people, Black sex workers, Black people who are migrants to the country, people who are marginalized, having safe birthing experiences is what I would like to see. And I think it would be great to have more Black transgender midwives as well, and Black LGBTQ midwives. And essentially, I would just like to see Black people's lives mattering and Black babies' lives mattering in that time.
Thank you, and completely agree. So I had mentioned at the beginning that we're going to open up this portion for a question and answer period from the audience. So audience members, if you do have any questions for the panelists, you can feel free to put them in the chat function on YouTube, and we'll just wait a couple maybe minutes until the questions come, if people have any questions. Or if anybody has any panelists, if you have any concluding remarks or thoughts you want to share while we wait for questions.
I would just probably pose a question to the people, the audience out there, for those of you who maybe are contemplating becoming midwives, who have used midwives. If you are a midwife, what sorts of nuggets of wisdom that you would have for people that are contemplating midwifery as a career or as a healthcare provider?
That is an important question. I see that we do have one question, and this one is addressed directly to Joy. What advice do you have for parenting children with disabilities, or for parents with children with disabilities?
Thank you for that question. I would say that we recognize right now, I think it's being made very, very clear that there's a lot of fractures in our healthcare system. So what I say to people that when they are supporting, even from the beginning stages of being pregnant or going through your birthing experience and then postpartum, the thing that I learned very quickly was that, number one, if you're dealing with a situation of being hospitalized, that when you are, when you can, you have to realize that as a parent, you will be the constant. And so you have to take care of yourself as much as you can and get people to rally around you so that you can be good, so that you can advocate for your child. That's the thing that I learned. I remember when I was in the hospital and people, people want to bring you like, I don't know, mac and cheese and like all this food that makes you want to like, fall over. And I realized like, oh no, like I actually have to be in the best, do whatever it meant for me to be in the best headspace so that I can be as present as possible. I had to make sure that I was sleeping, and some of this stuff is easier said than done, but I realized that when I was in the space to understand, okay, I have to make sure that I'm getting therapy. I have to make sure that I'm getting sleep. You know what I mean? And even if you don't just have those things that are readily accessible, like I was in a position of privilege to have those things readily accessible to me, to figure out like, how can I get that support and find out who's the person that's going to help me to get that support. Like I said, and coming back to the fracture in the system, is that I realized that my job was, I became the project manager. So because a lot of systems don't talk to each other, and again, because we as parents are the constants, and my partner is the person who's doing most of the breadwinning, every day I'm sitting down and I'm saying, who's doing this, who's doing that, who's responsible for this, and keeping up and keep making sure that people are talking, or even just trying to advocate for a service that gets people to talk. And so that I would say is and in the midst of that, trying to take care of myself as much as I can. That's the best advice that I can give to a parent who has a child with disabilities, because I believe that that's what gets you to a place where you feel like you're not drowning, that you're able to kind of see what's going on, and that you can even thrive and enjoy the joy and the beauty of your child. Because I think that's part of the challenge, is you're dealing with so many things that your focus is just, I have a child with a disability, I have a child with a disability, when your focus should be, I have a child and I want to enjoy my child, and I want to see my child grow up and do things that children should be able to do. So those are the two pieces that I would share.
Thank you for that. We have another question, and it reads, what kind of outreach do midwives do or can do at the high school level?
Mm-hmm. There's a number of things midwives can do. I know over the years I've done a number of things. I've gone to high schools and talked to students about what midwives do and how we work. I've done outreach through some of the programs that provide services to teen parents, young parents. Some midwives do uninsured work at an uninsured clinic. So there's a number of things that midwives can do. Often it's on their own time or separately. Sometimes their practice groups will support them to do that. But the community can also reach out to midwifery groups in their community and just say, is there a midwife that can come and speak to our class or speak to our group? And often people or practices will assign someone to go and do those things. But particularly for organizations or places where young people of color or Black racialized or racialized students and young people are, you might be able to reach out to find someone to come and speak to your group. So there's ways to just kind of reach out to the midwifery practice groups that are in your community, and you can always go onto the website for Association of Ontario Midwives to find the midwifery groups in your community or in your city, and then contact those groups and see if there are any midwives of color or midwives willing to come and speak to your class or your group.
Thank you for that, Nicole. We have another question, and this one is directed to Leroy. Are there any adjunct services to midwifery that helped your journey?
At the time, I had my family doctor who's in the Sherbourne Health Clinic, and they have an LGBT health clinic, so that was really helpful for me. And pretty much as well, just community, building community with other Black parents and being able to talk about our different experiences and support each other was a huge help to me in my process, and continues to be really important to me as a parent too. But in terms of agencies and stuff like that, not really, aside from my midwife and my family doctor.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Leroy. And thank you, Nicole, Leroy, and Joy for joining this panel and sharing your perspectives and your experiences and your really honest reflections about midwifery care and your experiences in midwifery care. And thank you, everyone, for attending this screening. Learn more Ontario Midwifery Screening. And I'd like to now pass it over to Faduma Gure for the closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Kayon, Nicole, Leroy, and Joy for sharing your time, thoughts, and experiences with us. And thank you to everyone for gathering with us today. We hope that you learned something new and will share your learning with others. Next time you meet a midwife, ask them who they are and what they do. And we hope that you will be a part of making change so that our healthcare system is accessible and free from discrimination. Thank you again to our partnering organizations and funders, ADBCC, the People's Residence, Pan Fantasy Steelband, the Ryerson Midwifery Education Program, the Midwives Collective of Toronto, the Canadian Association of Midwives, the Ryerson DME Creators Grant, the Ryerson Student Life and Learning Support Student Initiative Fund, the Ryerson Faculty of Community Services, and the Association of Ontario Midwives. To learn more about this project and watch the series, you can visit at learnmoreontariomidwifery.com. There, you can watch the series that includes captions, as well as the option for French subtitles. We also have a resource to support family and community conversations about midwifery. You can learn more about midwifery in Ontario and find a midwife at ontariomidwives.ca. Thank you all so much, everyone. Take care.